Hey, I'm Charlie from Common Stitch and welcome to our YouTube channel. Today we're going to be doing a sew along for the Lilly Pilly wrap dress. So this pattern is a beginner friendly pattern and it comes in sizes 6 to 24. You can buy this pattern as a paper pattern or as a PDF and you can print it at home or you can take it to the print shop and print it in AO. This pattern comes with two different styles, so you can either do the cross front style or you can have it as a tie front, and we give you the instructions on how to sew both options. But today we're going to be sewing the cross front wrap dress. This pattern's designed to be sewn in woven fabrics, and here at Common Stitch we love sewing in linens, so I'll be using a fun green linen to sew up the Lilly Pilly dress today. Let's get sewing. Alright, step one, we are joining the shoulder seams. So I've got my fabric right side to right side and I've got my fronts connected to my backs, and I'm just going to sew along that straight edge with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then I'm going to jump on the overlocker and overlock it. Make sure you take your pins out as you sew, don't be naughty like me and sew through them. I'm going to jump over to the iron and give it a good press towards the back. I'm just making my bias binding. I like to use this little tool. It folds the binding as we go. And then I just give it a good press. I've got a couple of joins in my binding just to make the most of my fabric. Alright, so I've made my bias binding and I've got my dress. So I'm going to, on the right side of the fabric, so I'm making sure that my seams are on the inside. On the left side as you wear it, down at the bottom point, I'm going to start there sewing my bias binding. I'm going to find the end of the binding. I'm going to unroll the binding, just one edge, and I'm going to stitch in that ditch, and I'm going to line the raw edge up with the raw edge of the garment. I'm going to put a little bit of tension on my bias binding. I'm not going to pull it too tight because I don't want to make it gather, but I'm just going to have a little bit of tension on the binding and then ease in nicely the fabric. This way it will make the garment sit a bit more snug around the neckline. The next step is we're going to turn the garment around the other side and we're going to roll our bias binding into the inside, and we're going to keep that edge folded under. So all of those raw edges will get hidden away in our bias binding. And I'm going to stitch along that edge all the way around the garment. I've pressed all my ties in 6 mils along both long edges and I've given them a good press. And then I've folded in one of the short edges 6 mils and once again gave it a good press. And then I folded all of the ties again in half lengthways and pressed them. Now I'm jumping on the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch around all of my folded edges to keep the folds in place. Alright, so I've got my dress. So the front left side, as you wear it, I'm going to lay that down with the wrong side or the inside of the garment upwards. Now I've got my little tack, or like my little notch, sorry, from where we're going to put our ties. The other notch that we marked will now be where the bias binding is. So where that lower one is, I'm just going to put a pin a bit further in just so I can like keep track of where it is. Because this step, we're now going to double fold this straight edge. My iron's just cooled down, just waiting for it to warm up again. And so I'm folding 1 centimeter and giving it a good steam as I go. And I'm going to fold it again, 1 centimeter, and give it a good press. And we're going to put our ties in at the same time. So one tie, I'll bring it down this way so you can see a little bit more. One tie is going to sit right on the edge at the top. So I've just tucked the raw end in under that fold and it's going to come out that way. So when we stitch all this down, we're actually attaching the tie at the same time. Just got to put a pin in to keep that in place. It's quite bulky. And then we've got the other tie. Just got some loose threads, so I'll just trim them off. And the second tie is going to go where I put that pin, to mark where that lower notch was. And I'll put a pin to keep that in place too. So now I'm going to stitch down that folded edge that we just pressed, and that will attach the ties. And then I'm going to also do like a little tack along the folded edge along there, just to keep the ties sitting out this way. Alright, and we're going to do the same on the other side. So I've got my neckline and I've double folded that edge, and we've just got the one tie on this side because it ties on the inside of the garment. So I'm just going to do that same stitch. Alright, so the next step is attaching our sleeves. So I've got my dress, I've laid it out flat, I've got the back, I've got the armhole, and then I've got the front up here. So on my sleeve there's 2 little notches, and that indicates the back. So with the right side together, I'm going to start in the armpit junction, and I'm going to pin it, lining up the notches of the sleeve to the notches on the body. I'm going to continue this all the way around so the sleeve gets sewn into the armhole. I'm going to jump on my sewing machine and I'm going to do a straight stitch, 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then I'm going to overlock it as well. Alright, so I've repeated that process on both sleeves, and now I'm going to give it a good steam. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to close my side seam. So I've got my garment, and so I'm going to put it together front to back with the side seams lined up. I've just popped a pin in the little armpit junction there just to keep the sleeve in place. So on my fabric I've got my little notches that I copied off the pattern, and these indicate where the ties are going to go. So I'm going to pin a tie in place at each notch. I'm just going to put the pin on the outside just to make sure I don't accidentally sew through it. So I've got one, I've got two, and then I'm going to put the layer back on top. So these ties will get encased between the front and the back. We're only doing this on one side, the other side will be a bit different because it's just got the one tie and it doesn't need to be encased in the seams. So now I'm just going to go along and pop some more pins in, keeping everything lined up. I'm going to sew this at the sewing machine. It's going to have a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Then I'm going to overlock it and jump on the iron and press the seam towards the back. While I'm hair pinning, I'm just going to pin the other side as well. We don't need to worry about the tie placement on this side because we can tack it on once we have the seam sewn and overlocked. So I'm just going to put a pin in the armpit junction and have a couple running down the side seam. Just making sure that the hem's lined up. And I might just put one in the sleeve too. Just making sure that the hem of the sleeve is lined up. So same as the other side, it'd be a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then I'm going to overlock. Now that I've got my side seams finished, the side seam that we didn't just sew the ties into, we're just going to use our notches. Hopefully you can see them a little bit through overlocking. So it's the top notch, and we're going to just tack on our last remaining tie. I have just folded under, I hope you can see if it focuses. I have just folded under that raw edge, and I'm going to just tack along there. I'm just going to do 2 rows of stitching just to make sure it's on nice and strong. Nothing worse than a tie falling off when you're wearing a garment. And while I'm at the machines, I'm going to run the overlocker around both of my sleeves and the hem of my garment. You don't have to do this as it does end up getting double folded, but my fabric's frayed quite a bit. I have been making this dress over a couple of days, so just to tidy that up before I double fold, I'm just going to run it through the overlocker. When overlocking sleeves, I find it works best if you have the inside of your garment facing out and the right side in, and then you can like tunnel it through the overlocker. And once you get back to where you've started, just overlap it, like just over an inch, and then taper it off. So I've just jumped back up to the ironing board, and so I'm just going to double fold my hem and give it a good press as I go. Once I've gone all the way along, I'm going to jump at the sewing machine and stitch along that double fold. But while I'm here, I'm also going to double fold my sleeve hems as well. And here it is in all of its glory. Thank you so much for watching this so long. I hope you love the pattern as much as we do. We'll make sure to add the link to the pattern in the description below. Thank you so much once again, and happy sewing.